So a quick 30-second shameless plug. I'll be kicking off a series unrelated to the Chiefs tomorrow on my channel, All Apologetics, where I'll be covering the top 10 reasons why people don't believe in Christianity. If you could go like and subscribe to the channel, I'm going to be doing a hard rollout tomorrow, and I'd really appreciate the support. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I really appreciate you guys and your support of watching these videos over the years, and any support you can give me is greatly appreciated. Thank you. All right, Chiefs fans. It's preseason, so it's my time of year where I get pretty excited. I'm always excited about the draft. Excited to see what we're going to be doing. This year's started off very interesting. You may have already just noticed as I sit back, I'm feeling the pain. I'm embracing the pain. You gotta use that as fuel to motivate you for the next year. So I'm wearing Super Bowl 59. But yeah, as far as the offseason's gone so far, there's been some surprising moves. I was actually personally not too surprised by Joe Thuney getting moved. I think at least the Chiefs got some draft capital. I think what you have to look at is the contract. The contract that he had was pretty expensive. He's worth every penny of it. He probably wasn't willing to restructure to lower his cost, and I think I'm going to talk about that in a future slide. So I won't spend too much time here on it, but I think that's what that was really about. So the Chiefs were able to get some draft capital. They don't have a lot of money to pay those rookies this year. So getting it next year is not too bad of an idea, just stacking up those draft picks. It's a better option than if they were to cut him, which I thought was a real risk just because of where our cap situation was. And like I said, I'll be talking about that in the actual shared information I'll be going over. And then I think it's a cascading effect from some of the other ones. So we made that decision to move on from Joe Thuney in order to make sure we signed Trey Smith. And so we franchise tagged him. He's taken up a bigger chunk than he probably will long term, so that'll save us a little bit more money once we can work out that deal, hopefully, as it stands right now. He signed his franchise tag today, and made him the most highest paid guard in the entire NFL for this upcoming season. So I'm sure we'll do something to rectify that. I think some of what you were seeing is them trying to free up some additional money in order to make a move for Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. And it was really being talked about pretty openly that Ronnie Stanley was going to make it to free agency, and I think the Chiefs were going to make a pretty sizable offer to him to get him over player left tackle spot, and then probably move Kingsley over into left guard, something along those lines. I think that was kind of the plan, and then Stanley kind of surprised everybody and signed a very hometown-friendly contract with the Ravens to stay there for 3 years, $60 million, which is $20 million a year for a left tackle. I mean, that's a pretty good price for a guy of his caliber. I think the Chiefs would have gladly signed up for that contract. So, yeah, that was a little bit unfortunate. And I think that's what you see from that is that we know there's not other left tackles out there that we're going to be able to get unless there's a pretty significant trade that we're able to make. And I don't see where that opportunity is going to be opening up at this point in the season. And I think that's where you could see the Chiefs try and hold some cap room open for a trade, maybe mid-season, maybe week 6, 7, as teams start kind of falling out and realizing, their season's kind of falling apart. Now, I don't know what we do until then, and we'll talk about that in future videos, but so I think what they ended up doing is the money that they had earmarked for trying to get Stanley, I think they used that to sign Nick Bolton tonight. And so I think that's where you see those corresponding moves. So, the cut of Joe Thuney, franchise tagging Trey Smith, and then subsequently now signing Nick Bolton on to a long-term contract. I do think that doesn't bode well for anybody who is really hoping we keep Justin Reed on the team. It's possible, and the only reason I say it's possible is because in recent years safeties have become they just aren't getting paid what they used to get paid. I don't know why the respect of them has been lost a little bit. I know in Kansas City, at least for me, I've loved having Justin on the team. He's a pretty dependable player. If he gets out of the game, I'm like, he'll be back in a play or two, and that's generally been the case. We'll see how his free agency goes, but I think for what he probably wants to get paid, he's not going to get paid anywhere near what we paid him before, and it just depends what others are willing to pay for his services. So I think Nick Bolton signing basically shows that that's the case, and I think I'd probably prioritize linebacker over safety too, because there is a lot of safety talent generally at the end of free agency and even towards the later rounds of the draft. So after that, I'll kick it into the actual coverage of where our roster is and lead us into where we're looking going into the free agency and into the draft. All right. So for the first episode of State of the Chiefs for the 2025-2026 season, I'm going to be just doing a quick recap of some of our offseason moves so far leading up to free agency. It's kicking off here in just a few hours, actually. I pushed this right up to the brink. I'll be talking about some of the moves the Chiefs have made, some of the opportunities maybe lost, and where we stand with the cap, where we stand at each position, and just giving a high-level overview before we start really diving in for the draft coverage. I won't expect a huge amount of activity from the Chiefs in free agency, and I'll give a little bit of explanation as to why that is. I mentioned in the intro is that I was going to talk a little bit more on the Joe Thuney move. And the reason I think I was not surprised to see this, and I actually thought it was a potential that the Chiefs may end up even cutting or trying to restructure his deal. We clearly have big issues at left tackle. There's no way to go around that. And Joe Thuney is the one person, if you look at our top 10 salaries going into the offseason, as far as how they affect the cap, he was number 4 on this. It's actually surprising to see how much, Juwan Taylor is actually hitting the cap at this point. But not much of a difference between the two. But the difference being is if we cut Juwan Taylor, it's a massive dead money cap hit, and it still doesn't even save us any money. Whereas the only two that would save us money in that top 10 is either cutting Joe Thuney or cutting Travis Kelce, which we're not cutting Travis Kelce. There was a lot more money that could have been saved if that was the option we would have decided to go, I guess. But obviously we're not cutting a future Hall of Famer that still has a little juice left in the tank and is going to be extra motivated. We feel like we could probably get someone in at guard, maybe downgrade on Joe Thuney, because how can you upgrade over Joe Thuney? I honestly do believe he's one of the best guards in the league still. I don't think the Chiefs saw him any differently, but they know they needed a left tackle help. But what you can see here is that, as they're trying to free up some actual cap space to be able to make some moves to really kind of transform the team and even that offensive line the way they needed to, Joe Thuney was really the only option, the only lever they could really pull to make any difference in the cap space, outside of what they're most likely going to do with Patrick, Chris, Travis Kelce, so forth. Okay, so this is our current cap space on over the cap. We actually are negative $9 million at a cap deficit, a little over $9 million, which is problematic, obviously, to say the least. But I think the Chiefs know what they're doing with this, as I'll talk to here briefly. But this is also this is a little more challenging than it looks like, even at the -9, because we still are going to have to sign a backup quarterback. That's just weird. We don't have one really. Old Dolkin is not going to be our backup quarterback. And then we do need to sign a long snapper still, which I would imagine is going to be James Winchester unless he decides to retire or something along those lines. Hopefully that's not the case. $2.5 million is probably wishful thinking, but that's what I'm looking at. Bringing in Bolton on the $45 million contract, which I think, as Chiefs fans, we're pretty happy to see Bolton back, but it was a little bit of a surprise move. And I'll speak to that a little bit more. But I think wishful thinking, at least it'll probably be a back-end loaded contract, maybe a 10, 15, 20, something along those lines. That's the logic I'm using. Could be different, but that'd be another $10 million that's going to come off of it. Then you're going to have to pay your rookies that you signed from, UDFAs and the draft picks. So we don't have as many draft picks this year, so I lowered it from $8 million to $7 million this year. But we shall see. And then I always leave a little buffer there for the 53-man cut down, as we have to go from 51 to 53, and that's going to add some more to the cap as well. So the estimated available amount is 31 million in the hole, 31.5 million in the hole. But if we were to convert Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones's contracts, we could maneuver them around to save roughly 47.8 against the cap. So that would leave us about 16 million, working capital. That's using rough math. This is not perfect. Could be anywhere between, I don't know, I'd guess it's probably not going to get better than that, but somewhere between 12 and that number. So somewhere between 12 million and 16 million for free agents that they would maybe want to re-sign. That could mean bringing back Justin Reed, or potentially any other Chiefs you would be excited to see come join the team. They also like to leave a little bit of room just in case they want to bring somebody in mid-season, which I'm going to speak to that as well in the next slide. But that's what we're working with. And as you look to the right, you can see dead money. That's again where Joe Thuney's cap hit is still. I mean, the dead cap is still there, and it's already shown for this year. I don't know if, since it was pre-June 1st, if that's why it has to hit here. I'm not an expert on that aspect of the cap. Sometimes you can push it to future years. I don't know if it has to be posted June 1st or pre-June 1st, like how that impacts it. DeAndre Hopkins, the reason you see him on there is I believe that was part of the negotiated trade with the Titans to get him over, is that the Chiefs had to eat some of that dead cap. And then Kamal Hadden was just part of his contract that when he was cut. All right, so here's where the rubber meets the road. Here's our current roster as it stands. 55 players under contract, 2 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is the main one, obviously, and old Doken is most likely their practice squad quarterback. So we're going to have to be bringing in another free agent vet, hopefully a vet min. Running backs, we really only have one that is a for sure lock on the under contract, and that's Pacheco. He'll be in a contract year, and he did, not end the year really well. But Kareem Hunt was also, playing pretty well and taking a decent load share. So it's possible Pacheco could come back with a vengeance and have a pretty good year. But I would look for the Chiefs to be looking for a running back in the draft, and also potentially even looking at free agency. I just don't see him spending a lot of money on running back. Wide receivers, we have 8 under contract, but that's a little misleading. There's really only 3 that I consider locks. That'd be Hollywood, Rice, and Worthy. And I see Sky Moore as a high risk of being cut candidate. He'll save us over $1 million on the cap, and he's less than $500,000 of dead cap. So it's the year we would cut Sky if we're going to cut him. I know the Chiefs front office seems to really like him for some reason, but I think it's a good chance he'll be cut in the offseason. And then after that, there's one player I could see making the roster, and that would be Nico Remigio. Obviously, he was on the roster at the end of the season, and he's done a good job on special teams for us. I'd like to see him get, see what he can do more in the actual receiving portion of it. I've been pretty impressed with some of the stuff I've seen from him, so we'll see. But I could see some moves here still at wide receiver to be made. Tight end, we have 5 on the roster, but really it's more like 3 that we're really likely to stay stay on the team. Obviously, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, that's a good duo. You have Jared Wiley. We don't know what we really have with Jared Wiley yet. He had the torn ACL, and we'll see how he bounces back. I still think there's an opportunity if there's a really great value pick. I have one that I would really like, and fingers crossed that's actually the case. But there's a chance we could pick one up in the mid rounds if that's available. But we might be pretty set at tight end. We're spending so much on Travis Kelce's contract as it is that I don't see that changing. Offensive linemen, we do have a lot under contract, but not a lot of what I would say we're ecstatic with talent. In fact, my notes did not change year over year whatsoever. When I looked at last year's State of the Chiefs at this time, I had bad depth, expect 2 to 3 picks, and or veteran free agents. And the truth is, with Stanley just coming off the board, staying at Baltimore on a hometown discount is what I would call it. I was expecting the Chiefs to, go out and pick him up, and I think that's why you see some of the moves that did cascade down. There's not a lot of offensive tackles out there to really make it worthwhile for the Chiefs to go after right now. It's possible we could see another Donovan Smith sighting, because there was actually injuries that really kept him out of being able to come back and compete in 2024. So maybe 2025 he does come back to the team. I mean, he was serviceable at least at that. We were able to win a Super Bowl with him. So offensive line is where we need the most help. Defensive ends, we're okay there, but I could see us adding another edge. This is a really good edge class as far as my early scouting has gone for the draft. So I could see us picking up one there, and I have one that I really like who won't take up early draft capital. So we'll see. You'll see that in future draft videos. Defensive tackle is our worst position on the team. If there's one pick that is not sexy but is obvious to anybody who's looking at the Chiefs roster makeup right now, that the Chiefs will be looking at with the 34th pick, it's going to be a defensive tackle. It's Chris Jones and literally nobody else at this point. The others on defensive tackle there are, I liked Fabian Lovett, but he never made an active roster last year for those. I mean, he was on practice squad. So it's unlikely to see him coming in and taking meaningful snaps. And then, others that are, it's just not a lot. And so we're going to have to bring in some talent there. I would say the draft, we're literally going to have to go in the first 2 rounds, I'd say, on a defensive tackle. There's just not much there. And then at linebacker, as it was announced just earlier tonight, Nick Bolton signing a contract for 3 years, $45 million. So we're going to be pretty solidified at the linebacker room, but I can still see us trying to add another linebacker, depending on what the value is at that point. I think this is going to be a value draft for the Chiefs all the way around. I don't think we're going to be able to fill needs very easily in this draft. Cornerback room, I would think we would like to upgrade our number 2, number 3 spots on the quarterback depth chart if it's a possibility. If there was somebody who really fell in the first round, I could see that being a potential spot where we would maybe make a pick. If I'm looking at the safety room, Brian Cook. I really like Hicks. He's a fun player to watch, but he has some holes in his game that hopefully he'll hammer. He'll work those out. I mean, Spags has a very tough defense. It takes a while to get the hang of it. He was kind of in and out because it was basically if Reed got injured, he was coming in there to actually play more Reed's role. So we'll see. But I think the floor is okay. The ceiling doesn't look too terribly high as far as our ability, and I think we need some better over-the-top kind of help. So, getting another safety couldn't hurt. Kicker, we're good. Punter, we're good. And then I'm just, praying that we re-sign James Winchester. He doesn't decide to retire or anything crazy like that. And that's how we're looking for our current state of the Chiefs roster.